So this is the Unaka Gear 8020 roof rack for the Promaster, and I'm going to be going through the process of installing it in this video. So I made like a drawing with like the layout of the roof rack, and I put little markings and notes by everywhere I need different pieces of hardware, and I laid out in each area what hardware is needed. So when you order the kit, you gotta kind of figure out what your roof layout's gonna be ahead of time, and you can choose how many crossbars you want. So these are the crossbars here, and they have two different sizes. I got the 56.75 inches long crossbars. You can also get like ones that are like 60 inches long or so, and then there's these side rails. So this front side rail is about 60 inches long, and then there's the back one that's 56.75 inches long. Now this is for a 136 Ram Promaster, so the different lengths of fans are going to have different lengths of side rails, but in general I think the setup's going to be pretty similar. This is the type of solar panel I'm going to be putting in to the roof rack. This is a 50-watt solar panel, and I'm going to be putting in 10 of them. So there's going to be two up here, two solar panels up here, and there's going to be three here, and then there's going to be two back here. And then in the middle right here, there's going to be one max air fan, and then in the very front, there's going to be another max air fan right there. So on the back of the solar panels, they should all have like little holes to mount the solar panels onto. So on here, there's a hole here, and there's a hole over here. So there's two holes on these sides of the solar panel, and then Unaka Gear makes these brackets that are like flush mount brackets. So that's going to mount onto here, and then that's going to mount onto the 8020 crossbar. So for the solar panel brackets, the hardware comes in these individual little plastic bags, and there's enough hardware in these plastic bags for two brackets. And then there's also the there's other bags for the for these other like L brackets, and these L brackets are what you use to mount the crossbars to the side rail. And I believe these like T-nuts are the same size as the solar panel ones, but the solar panel ones come in individual bags. So what I'm doing next is I'm placing all of the little T-nuts in the channels here. So if you haven't used this extruded aluminum type material before, basically there's these like T-nuts, and then that's what you put the screw into, and that kind of like twist, and that basically locks in place. So that's how you mount down everything. So I've placed the T-nuts on all of the top facing areas of the 8020, and I've put little pieces of tape to hold in the T-nuts to keep them from falling out the sides. So next I'm going to place the T-nuts in the sides of the rails. This is where the 8020 adapter brackets mount onto. One thing I wanted to mention was that for the T-nuts, for these L brackets, you want to make sure that on the crossbars here, the portion of the T-nut with like the shorter end is facing this direction. That way you can fit the crossbar on when it's on this side as well, or else it won't fit up with the holes correctly. For the T-nuts for the 8020 adapters, I just placed the T-nuts facing like opposite of each other, so the short ends are kind of facing the opposite directions. So now I've placed the T-nuts for the 8020 adapters all along here, and now the next I'm going to do is I'm going to start mounting the L brackets onto the crossbars here. So one thing to mention is that all of the bolts for the T-nuts are these like hex nuts, so you're going to need some sort of screwdriver or maybe Allen key just to tighten them down. But in the description below I'm going to put links to all of the tools that you need for this. So in order to join up the two side rails together, there's this flat plate right here, and yeah, you just have the two T-nuts on this side and then two T-nuts on that side. Now, depending on where your crossbars are, you might have to do something a little bit different depending on if this crossbar is going to line up with this flat plate here. So this should line up here, and then I have the crossbar just a little bit in front of it, so that way this L bracket doesn't interfere with the flat plate here. And I think one thing that you can do with the flat plate, you could potentially like put it underneath maybe instead of putting it on top, or maybe potentially on the side here instead of putting it on top as well. One thing to note is that for the 80-20 adapters, where the side rails meet, one end of the 80-20 adapter is going to be on one side, and the other end is going to mount on the other side of the bracket. Another thing to mention is that you can order two of these flat plates to just be able to make the connection more sturdy in between the two side rails. But from the instructions for this, I believe since this 80-20 adapter is going to be in the middle here, then that provides a lot of support, and then also, you know, this provides extra support for the two side rails connecting together. So I don't think it should be an issue. But if you want to, you can buy two of these. One thing that you do want to do is on the bolts, you want to apply this Loctite 242 blue, and they give you a couple of these in the hardware that it comes with when you buy the roof rack. I did buy a little bit more in case this isn't enough, but we'll see if it's enough. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna apply it now and mount the L brackets on, and I guess you could do it later once you have like the roof rack like up on the van, and do it afterwards. You just have to you know, take out each bolt and then put the Loctite on, then put the bolt back in. So this should hopefully speed up the process some. So for the Loctite, I'm just putting a little bit on one side of it. It's kind of like a liquid, and then eventually it hardens and cures, I believe. So now I've mounted the L flat plates on all of the crossbars, and they're just they're not like super tight on there, but they're tight enough to where they don't slide around. And I've also labeled the side rails and the crossbars where they're going to be oriented on the roof. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the 80-20 adapter and the roof rack bracket up to the Promaster. Okay, so now we're going to be mounting the roof rack brackets and the 80-20 adapters onto these little T-nuts here. So the Promaster has these little like built-in like T-nuts, and then you can just mount these on here, so you don't have to drill any holes into the van at all. So that's pretty nice. You just place the rack bracket over the top of the T-nut, and then you put this over the top of that, and then you mount this on top of that with the bolts and washers over there. So pretty simple. So yeah, you just want to hand tighten it down now, and then at the end you're going to use a torque wrench to fully tighten it. Okay, so all of the brackets are installed. Now I think it's time to move on to the side rails. Now that we have the 80-20 adapters and roof rack brackets up, we're going to put the side rails. I have this like a moving blanket on here, just so that way the metal from like the 80-20 doesn't scratch up the roof of the van. Yeah, so basically just attaching the sides up to the T-nuts here, doing the front one first and then the back one after that. So once you have on the side rail, just mount on top the flat plate that connects the two side rails together. Okay, so now that we got the side rails in place, I'm gonna start to put on the crossbars. So you might also be wondering, why I don't have the fans installed yet. So I am planning on putting on 2 max air fans, one in the back and then one up here in the front. But because I have 2 in there and I'm putting like solar panels on each side, and then like the crossbars have to be aligned like just right with the solar panels and like pushed all the way forward. So I didn't want to install the max air fans and like accidentally put it in the wrong spot to where I couldn't put this crossbar on correctly to like to push forward the solar panels far enough. So yeah, so I'm just kind of putting this on first, and then I'm gonna put on the max air fans, and then after that I'm planning on putting on the solar panels. So I'm just putting on all the crossbars right now. A couple of them have been a little bit hard to like get down in between here, just because of the probably the tolerancing on the actual length of the crossbars, and also just the way these are mounted on here. So yeah, but I was able to get them all down, so I'm going to just line them up with, I have to use that solar panel as like the to determine the width of the crossbar for all of these, but that's what I'm doing next. Awesome, so now I got all the crossbars lined up and tightened down on the crossbars. I didn't put in all the screws on all of them yet, just in case I need to loosen them at all. But yeah, so I'm gonna do that next. Okay, it's awesome. So I got all the crossbars on, all the bolts in, and then I went around and I tightened up on the roof rack brackets and the 80/20 adapter brackets. I tightened those up. You are supposed to use a torque wrench to tighten up the screws and stuff to a certain rating, and I haven't done that yet, so I'm gonna end up doing that maybe next. But I also have to install the max air fans, and then I have to install all of the solar panels. Also, for the Loctite, I would suggest getting some extra. This little bit of it that came with the kit wasn't enough, so it's taken me about, let's see, I started yesterday with laying out the roof rack and getting all of that ready to go, and that was about maybe, I don't know, 6 hours or so. And then I put up the roof rack brackets yesterday, and then today in about maybe 5 hours or so to put up the rest of this roof rack. It doesn't take too long, but you might be able to do it all in one day if you have a lot of light. So another thing, I think it was probably a lot easier installing this roof rack without having anything else up here on the rooftop. So if you have the max air fans installed already, or something else installed already, then it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. I was able to just like put everything up here on the roof, and then just get up here on the roof and then just install everything, and that worked out pretty well. So I went ahead and tightened down all the screws and bolts for the roof rack. So I ended up putting up the 2 max air fans on the roof, and then I had to space out the crossbars in the right width, so that way they would line up with my solar panels. And so then after I did all of that, I went ahead and tightened down all the bolts. So all of the hex key screws get tightened down to about 156 inch-pounds, and the hex bolts for the 80/20 roof rack brackets, those ones get tightened down to about 144 inch-pounds. So I just saw this right now. I mentioned that this crow's foot was too short that I bought in order to get like into the roof rack adapters when you're trying to tighten them down, and I just realized that the kit that Unaka Gear provided, in the parts they added this like little like bracket thing that you can like attach this onto your torque wrench, and then you can use this to like extend over to the bolts on the roof rack brackets. So yeah, I wish I would have seen this before. So I might go tighten down my roof rack with this to get it down to the correct torque rating. Alright, so I was able to use this extension crow's foot that came in the kit now to get the roof rack bolts tightened down to the 144 inch-pounds rating. You just got to make sure that when you're tightening it that you try to keep it flat on there when you're turning it, so that way it doesn't like get an angle and then like kind of bend the bracket here, or bend the crow's foot here. 'Cause I don't know what material this is, but it kind of can bend a little bit if you have it at an angle. So you want to kind of like keep it flat, and that also helps to make sure that you don't actually like round out the corners in the bolt as well. So another thing I wanted to mention is about these solar panel brackets. You gotta make sure that there's enough width here behind the solar panel for these washers. So the washers that the kit comes with are like these like pretty large diameter ones, and I think they're like an inch wide. But for my solar panels, this backing here was too short enough to fit these washers behind here. So I had to buy some others that I believe they're 5/8 inch diameter washers on the outside, and those fit back here behind here. And another thing I want to mention too is that when you put on these bolts here, they come with like these like locking nuts, and you gotta be careful when you put them on. Like the screws are pretty long for these things. You gotta make sure that when you have the bolt going in and then the locking nut back here, you want to make sure that the locking nut is like straight on with the bolt, so it doesn't like bend sideways or one way or another, because that can get like the locking nut in like a bind, and that actually happened to me like multiple times. So basically this locking nut here, it got like slightly off, and so I tried like tightening it down all the way, but I couldn't tighten it down all the way, so like the bracket here was still loose, and I tried untightening it, and I couldn't untighten it all the way either, so I couldn't get the bolt off, the locking nut off. And basically I had to use like an impact drill, and I tried like untightening it all the way, and then the bolt actually like sheared, so like it sheared off, and that happened to me like four different times. I think it was 3 or 4 different times. So that was pretty annoying. I think that was kind of like user error, but also like since these bolts are so long, it's kind of easy to like get them at like kind of like an angle, and then the locking nut kind of gets off slightly. So yeah, but I was able to get them all in, and I just barely had enough. I had some extra bolts in what I ordered, so I was able to use the extra few that I had. If you want to have a like a socket wrench like this, and this is actually a 7/16 inch socket here, and then you need some pliers to get back here to like hold down the locking nut in place while you use the socket wrench. And it's kind of difficult because you have to like make sure that this angle bracket's not like at one angle or another when you're tying it down the way, so you have to like hold it on the side here. So yeah, getting on these angle brackets isn't that easy. I mean, maybe if you had like the solar panel flat down instead of at an angle here, I just put them all on like this, where my solar panel is kind of like sitting kind of like vertical or so. So one of the downsides with this Unaka Gear roof rack system is that to tighten up these bolts over here, you have to like do it from like kind of like the inside, and the solar panel is kind of getting in the way. So I'm trying to like, I think if I have it right here, I can still kind of get into the, still be able to tighten up the bolts here if I ever need to, even if the solar panel is still on here. But I just gotta make sure that there's enough room over here to put the other solar panel here, and then the other one over here. So one thing that you gotta look out for if using these is that I realized that when you connect these together, like these are just one brackets are over top of each other, but you got to make sure they're kind of like pretty straight on, or else you can't really get the bolt through. So you can kind of push them a little bit to be able to get them on there, but that was a little difficult at first. But so I've been trying to get this one lined up, these two solar panels lined up with both of the brackets, and I was trying to use this solar panel over here, but I tried flipping it around and they didn't really line up well, and I couldn't push them over enough. So I ended up just getting a new solar panel, another one, and when I flipped it around, these actually line up pretty well now. See, that's what I'm talking about, where you can't get the bolts in because they don't line up right. When one of them is lined up, the other one doesn't. So I think I'm going to just try to loosen this bracket underneath here on this solar panel, and try to turn it to the right just a little bit. Hopefully I can get to line up then. Awesome, so that worked. I was able to just turn this bracket a little bit slightly over to the right, and now they both line up so I can put the screws in. One of the last things to put up are these little plastic pieces that go on the end of the side rails, so don't forget to do that. Just to let you know, these screws that go into the plastic pieces on the end of the side rails, they're actually a 5/32 hex screw bit, so yeah, they're not the same size as the rest of the little screws and the rest of the brackets. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the video on how to install the Unaka Gear roof rack. I think it turned out pretty well. I'm glad of how I was able to get all those solar panels up there and get the MagSafe fans up there as well, and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to be posting weekly update videos of how I'm building out my van, so if you want to see those and learn about other parts of the van build, then consider subscribing to my channel, Thrill Time Van Life. Alright, see you in the next one.